Well, let's chat now to Beaver Immigration Consulting CEO Nicholas Avramis. He's in our Cape Town studio for his take on this. Nicholas, a very good evening to you and thanks for your time. We do have a bit of a delay on the line to you, but please do bear with us. What is your take, or what have you noticed about why South Africans are leaving and where are they going?
Thank you so much for having me this evening. The number one reason why South Africans are leaving, at least for Canada, it comes down to prosperity and salaries. The truth is, many of my clients who I speak to are educated professionals, and they just don't feel they're getting fair market value for their skills in South Africa.
Are we talking about young single South Africans, or are we talking about couples with children who are making the move? And is there, is their focus on their children and their children's future also playing a big part, if it is them?
Absolutely. In the past 4 years, Canada has seen a 25% increase in study permits from South Africa. Canada has a very generous foreign student immigration plan. Essentially, if you go to Canada to study for a year, 2 years, you'll be a citizen in 4 years. The reason parents are sending their children to Canada right now is that once that child becomes a permanent resident, 2 years after they complete varsity, they can sponsor the whole family to come over. So many of my clients, parents who are sending their children to varsity, they want to make sure at the end of the line, at the end of the day, there's going to be a job waiting for that child.
What is it that Canada has to offer, Nicholas? And I'm sure you are talking about Canada mostly, but I'm sure you have your eye on a movement elsewhere as well. New Zealand is popular, we know, the UK, Australia, even the US, for those who can get in there, maybe not so much after this. But what is it that they are offering other than jobs? I mean, safety, is safety also a big concern?
Safety is always a concern, but I can't say that's what's driving my clients. Canada has a lot to offer compared to other countries. First, it has a very generous immigration system. Right now, Canada wants 1 million new immigrants over the next 3 years. But Canada also offers free health care. Canada spends $250 billion US on health care every year. That's half the size of the economy of South Africa. Canada spends $65 billion on education at the primary and secondary level, and universities are heavily subsidized. For parents in South Africa to raise a family, for medical aid, private schools, it's very expensive for the middle class here in South Africa.
So what's the catch then, Nicholas? I mean, it surely can't be that easy to just come over and just, voila, have a better life in places like Canada. Surely, the cost must be a bit more. What's the tax situation like? How much harder do you have to work? Can you afford extra help? Can you afford having a nanny? I know friends who live in other countries, for example, New Zealand. Some of them have had to give up work. They've had to become stay-at-home mums because some of the things that we're able to afford here, we can't afford overseas.
Absolutely. Every jurisdiction is different, and there's trade-offs between living in South Africa, New Zealand, the UK, and Canada. But by the end of the day, it depends what you want out of life, what you want out of your career. To raise a family, Canada's a good option. Your children will go to school for free, and you'll have access to universal health care. At the same time, Canada has a labor shortage of 500,000 right now. We have scarce skills in IT, we have scarce skills in banking, and the government wants to fill those ranks. Yes.
All right, so what would it take? You say it's a very easy immigration system to actually deal with, a very open and welcoming one. What would you need to actually get to Canada? Who would you need to be? You said IT, yes, and you said banking, but in terms of your financial standing, in terms of records and all of that, who do you need to be on paper?
That's a great question. The Canadian immigration system offers many paths towards entry. Canada's flagship immigration program is the Federal Skilled Workers Program. The key criteria that the government's looking for is ages between 25 to 35, at least 3 years skilled work, and you have to do very well on your English proficiency exam. That's why you're seeing a 93% spike of South Africans in the last 4 years moving to Canada. In fact, that South Africans' competitive advantage is their English proficiency.
And you're also obviously watching the numbers. We know that the number of South Africans in Canada is around 40,000 at the moment. Of those numbers, Nicholas, how many have you seen actually return to South Africa, having not had any joy there?
Unfortunately, I don't have those statistics in terms of South Africans coming back to South Africa. But what I can tell you is the last 4 years, the number of South Africans that have gone through the Canadian immigration system is about 17,000. About 12,000 in the last four years have become permanent residents or citizens, and another 5,000 have gone through on a temporary basis. We project the number of South Africans that will enter the Canadian immigration system at the end of this year will be 6,000. So if you just keep that number steady the next 4 years, you're looking at another 25,000 South Africans entering the immigration system in the next 5 years.